Welcome to Wholesome Self. My name is Stephen Obongo. Today we want to introduce you to the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is the first book of the 66 Christian biblical canonical books of the Old and the New Testament. Although the author of the book of Genesis is not clearly identified and universally agreed by scholars, traditionally the authorship has been attributed to Moses. No conclusive reasons exist to deny the Mosaic authorship of the book of Genesis. Even though the dating of the book of Genesis is not explicitly presented, it is likely to be between 1440 and 1400 BC. This is the time between which Moses led the Israelites from Egypt and the time of his death. Genesis has severally been referred to as the seed plot of the entire Bible, and a number of major doctrines in the Bible are actually introduced in the seed in the form of the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis covers very important doctrines. For example, the fall of man, God's promise of salvation and redemption after man had fallen away from the grace of God. The book of Genesis is also very important as it covers very important doctrines such as the doctrine of creation, the imputation of sin, the grace, the justification and atonement, the wrath, and issues to cover responsibility of man after being created by God. And many others doctrines have also been covered in this book, called the Book of Origin. Great questions, however, relating to the life of man, even in present days, are also covered in this book of Genesis. For example, many a times we are confronted with the questions like, where did I come from? The book of Genesis covers the issues to do with creation in Genesis chapter number 1. Other questions like, why am I here? What is my purpose? All these are also answered in the book of Genesis by trying to address the relationship between God and man. But still, there are other important questions that man has been confronted with. Yes, I was created by God. I live for a certain period. Then I die. The question is, where am I going? Again, all these are addressed by the book of Genesis. The destination of man after death is covered in Genesis chapter number 25, verses number 8. And most important, the question of eternity is also addressed by the book of Genesis. The most interesting phenomenon in the book of Genesis, or the general appeal, is the general appeal of the book of Genesis. This book appeals to scientists, to historians, to theologians. The housewife is actually attracted to this book, especially in many times when people go through different challenges. The farmer, the traveler, men and women alike are actually attracted to this book of Genesis. Indeed, it is a fitting as the beginning of God's creation and His plan for mankind in general. Although universally accepted as the most read and acceptable book ever published, there exist some great obstacles in this book or in the Bible in general. And we face many obstacles while trying to interpret the book of Genesis or the Bible in general. And we want to note that the inclination on our interpretation is based on either the cultural and the linguistic. Generally speaking, our worldview is influenced by many things, occurrences, situations, and cultures, as well as many more that shapes our understandings on the things around us, and our concept generally with respect to God. It is no surprise then that our worldview is often all we have. But it is a problem because our worldview often does not suffice and sometimes are misleading, especially to others. In this exposition or in our discussion, we have attempted to minimize the biases, including in the book that we have done the review of the book of this book of Genesis. A cross-section of anointed men and women of God, the youth, the elderlies in the church, and across other denominations have also provided their insight in our discussion and the presentation that we bring in this exposition. We profess the same God, our Creator, and therefore we believe that our discussion or this exposition will actually address common concepts and common principles that are appealing to all of us. By a mere understanding that we serve one true God and one living God. It is also my aim that as we walk through this journey of the exposition of the book of Genesis, we will be able to help you understand who God truly is. I hope, therefore, that you will enjoy our discussion over the next 50 weeks, during which we will be covering an exposition of the book of Genesis chapter by chapter. Genesis is a practical book, and if you look at our context in life, it mirrors many of the aspects in our own life. And therefore, I want to welcome you over the next 50 weeks to walk with us, to share in the Word of God, so that we may be able to understand who God really is. And we may also be able to understand why we are here, what is the purpose of our lives, so that as we live in the society, then we can be able to add more value to our society. Thank you, and looking forward for further engagements and discussions with you. Thank you.